So Pearls of Wisdom was founded by Annie Groth and Mass Mutual as a vehicle for educating women around their finances. It's an educational tool. And under Annie's persistent stand and her authentic commitment to women, for empowering women, not only in their financial lives, but really as whole women, as we are, in all areas of life, tonight we now bring Pearls of Wisdom to you in this form. And it is really an intimate conversation about our lives that we hope will inspire you to take action in areas of your life where you might feel stuck or where you felt silent, and now you'll have a vehicle or tools to now be able to speak. You've been given tonight, when you came in, sheets and envelopes, and these are for your Pearls of Wisdom, and we'll pick these up at the end of the evening. This isn't just an eat the donuts and go home kind of event, so we really want you to commit to taking action, and what you'll put on that piece of paper is your one pearl and your commitment to an action that you want to take in your life in the next 60 days. 30 days. Boy, you're shortening that timeline. That's because it's February and not January. And then if you will take the envelope and legibly self-address it, and you will fold your commitment and put it into the envelope, and we'll collect them in the end of the evening, and then Annie is going to mail them back to you. So to see where you are 30 days later. Also in your hands, you have a 3x5 card, and this is for questions for our panel at the end of the evening. So you'll hear from 3 speakers this evening, including Annie, and then we retire to a panel discussion. And so at the end of each speaker, I suggest, while it's fresh in your mind, that you jot down questions that you would want to ask of the panelists, and we will hopefully get to all of your questions. I just can't promise that we'll get to all of your questions, because we are also really committed to getting you out of here on time tonight. So you'll fill those out. If there's a specific speaker that you want to address that question to, just put her name in front of it and then your question, and then we'll have you pass them to the aisles, and we'll collect them when we're reorganizing and getting the speakers back up here for the panel. So now what I would love you to do is take out your cell phones. And I want you to turn them off so they aren't buzzing. But before you put them away, I would love for you to post on social media where you are tonight. And if you're using Twitter or Instagram, our hashtag is #PearlsAZ or #POW2016. Our Facebook page is Pearls of Wisdom AZ. So take a moment to head to the Facebook page and give us a like, and that'll ensure that you're now included in the community for all the postings that we do between our Pearls events. Yes, it's Pearls, #PearlsAZ or #POW for Pearls of Wisdom AZ. Raffle tickets we've talked about. I do want to mention that we have vendors around the room this evening. We have, let's see, Christy Hall with Conscious Connections. I'm sure many of you have at least signed up to get onto Christy's email list. We have headshots by Bobby Bennett in the back corner of the room, so don't leave tonight. There's Bobby waving at you. Headshots for just, is it $20, Bobby? I don't want to misquote you. $20 for your headshot tonight, and you'll get that in digital form. You can upload it to your Facebook page or your own websites. We have me, Jill Mapstead with Silpata Designs. So, and this evening, 20% of any of your sales tonight with Silpata will benefit the YWCA of Metropolitan Phoenix. That's our benefactor for the event this evening as well, so thank you to Annie for that. And our event is being videotaped this evening, so just so that you'll know, we won't be showing your faces necessarily, but you might have your voices on camera. And Annie, did you want to be up here before we introduce our first speaker? So this is our host for the evening, Annie Groth.
Just 1 second. Technical. How is everybody? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Annie Groth, and as Jill said, I founded Pearls of Wisdom in 2008, and from very small beginnings of 12 people in my conference room at my office to this evening, and I'm just thrilled that this community continues to grow. How many of you were at Pearls of Wisdom last August? Good. Well, I have great news. I completed the last 73 miles of the El Camino Santiago in Spain. If you ever get an opportunity to go do that, it was one of the most extraordinary experiences I've ever had in my life. And I met people from all over the world, and the answer was universal. When you ask people why they were doing it, they said, because I have to. It was just amazing. It was so amazing. I'm going back this fall, and I'll start in the beginning in France, in the Pyrenees, and I will do 150 miles this time. So very excited about that. And I'm thrilled about the evening that we're going to have tonight, and I hope that each one of you will find a pearl to take home with you. One of the sheets of paper, as Jill said, is for your pearl, and the other one is if you just want to take notes because you want to remember something. And feel free to ask away on your questions. There really isn't much censoring. And make sure and share this with your friends. Glad you're here. Thank you. Okay, before Jill gives you the formal introduction of our first speaker, Deidre, when I was in Spain, I have a very precious little nephew. He's 8 years old. His name is Brody, and he's brilliant. And I don't mean just because I'm his aunt and I think he's fabulous. He's brilliant. And he's also a worrier. And so when I was in Spain, I don't know if some of you are familiar with what a worry doll is. They're little dolls, and you get a little worry doll, and you tell the little doll your worry, and you put it underneath your pillow, and in the morning, when you wake up, your worry is supposed to be gone. So I thought, I know, I'll get Brody a worry doll. So the next day, I went over, and I was getting ready to come back to Phoenix. They live in Idaho. And I said, Brody, did you use your worry doll? And he said, yes. And he's precious. Little tiny blonde, blue-eyed little boy, just precious. And I said, well, did your worry go away? And he said, no. And I said, well, what are you worried about? And he was silent. And his 10-year-old brother, Benson, piped up. And said, he's worried that ISIS is going to come. How can an 8-year-old be worried about that? So I was fortunate that Deidre Aboud had come to my first Pearls of Wisdom last August, and I started following Deidre on Facebook. And when I read her open letter to Congress, I knew that she had to be here tonight to share with each and every one of you. And then you can applaud for her twice, but Jill's going to give you her real introduction. But I'm just thrilled you're here.
Terrific. So help me welcome Deidre Aboud. Deidre is a blogger, a diversity speaker, and an attorney at law. Deidre is a genuine and open-minded Muslim woman offering useful and insightful perspectives to raise human consciousness through candid conversations as a blogger and diversity speaker. Originally from Arkansas, she moved to Arizona in 1998, where she worked as a community and civil rights advocate for over 10 years before becoming an attorney. So please help me welcome Deidre Aboud to the stage. Good positioning for you. Do you want to be a little further that way? Is that okay? Okay, good. So you know the mic comes off.
So I started my timer. I'm sorry. I actually came with a different topic in mind. I didn't realize Annie was going to give that kind of introduction. I could have actually talked about that, but. My name is Deidre Aboud, and I am originally from Arkansas. And I, like I said, moved to Arizona in '98. In Arkansas, I was not Muslim. I was not born Muslim. I converted to Islam after I moved to Arizona. In the first time I heard about Islam? Well, first of all, my mother was Methodist. My dad was Southern Baptist. He wasn't fundamentalist Southern Baptist, and in the South, that matters. Out here, it's like you're either Christian or you're not, or you're Christian or you're Catholic, but they don't seem to worry so much out here about the sex. In the South, it matters. So I grew up in both churches, and I didn't know anything about Islam until the 6th grade. In the 6th grade, I learned in social studies class that the only Muslims that there were in the Middle East, and they were bad to their women. Their women were property, and they walked 2 steps behind the men with their head down, and they only wore black. In 7th grade, of course, I didn't like them. I guess I'm a woman. In 7th grade, the second time I heard about Islam, it was in social studies, where we were learning about, a little bit about each religion in the world. And when we learned about Islam, it was called Mohammedism in the book. And the book actually said that Muslims worshipped Muhammad. And then my teacher told me that all the religions other than Christian were going to hell anyway. And I thought, wow, what if we're wrong? But I had no interest in another religion. In college, I would go to all the Middle Eastern students and tell them they were all bad and going to hell. And the reason why they were going to hell is because they were bad to their women. And they would explain to me, no, Islam is very good to women, but sometimes men aren't. And I knew they were wrong. And I knew that it was my job to explain that to them. And after 1,400 years of their religion, I was the one that was going to break through that. So I started studying Islam. I was unable to find a Quran in Arkansas at the time. So I happened to be in Houston, and there was a little Middle Eastern store. And in the little Middle Eastern stores, they always have a little bookshelf. So I went in, and I found a Quran, and I took it home, and I started reading it, and immediately went to the Middle Eastern student and said, look at this sentence. See, this proves that you're all going to hell. And they would say, well, look at the next sentence. You can't just take these things out of context. They have a context. And so I started studying harder and continued to come to them and show things to them. And they explained to me, I said, you don't believe in Jesus and Mary, of course you're going to hell. And they said, well, we do believe in Mary. In fact, there's an entire chapter in the Quran called Mary. And we do believe in the virgin birth, therefore we believe in Jesus. We just don't say that he's... By the way, I never heard that Jesus was God until I moved to Arizona. I just got to tell you, I grew up that Jesus was the Son of God. It doesn't matter to me either way. I'm just saying at the time, I'd never heard that. They said, well, we just don't believe he's the Son of God. We believe he's a prophet, one of the greatest prophets. And we also believe that he's coming back, and he's the only prophet that's coming back because he still has a job to do. So as time went by, I unfortunately have to put my code in order to find out how much time I have. So as time went by, I started asking more questions instead of just trying to convert them, and started learning more. And it spoke to me. So I finally decided, I could really do this. I could do this religion, except I live in Arkansas. And I wouldn't be able to work, and because I would choose to wear the scarf, and no one would hire me. I didn't know anything about civil rights law at that time, and now that I know, it still doesn't matter. So, but I didn't know it at the time. So the second problem was I was like, who am I going to marry? It's not like there's a Muslim bar to go to, all we got left is like Middle Eastern exchange students, and I saw not without my daughter. I am not marrying some guy and moving to the Middle East. So I decided, I would just put it in God's hands in an arrogant way. I did not say, if God wants this, it'll be fine. What I said was, well, if God wants me to do this, he'll show me the way, won't he? Otherwise, it's not my problem. In '98, I had some vacation time that I was going to lose if I didn't use it. So my mom was coming to Arizona for a conference. I had never been to Arizona, and I really didn't want to lose my vacation time. So I decided to come with her. The only thing I knew about Arizona was that it was hot. So I brought shorts and t-shirts. and I get to Arizona in March of '98, and they had, not like this week, they had a cold spurt, so it was 40 degrees 4 out of 5, and it was 40 degrees the whole time, but it was raining 4 out of 5 days. I was freezing to death. Not compared to how I get cold though now. I'm a weakling now. So I went out and bought, warm-ups, and I just fell in love with Arizona. I said, this is the place for me. I just loved everything about Arizona. And so I went home, and we were in March. I gave my employer, I don't even know how many months. I told him in March I was leaving July 31st. And I worked out till July 31st. And then on August 3rd, I packed my car and drove to Arizona, where I didn't know anybody, didn't have a job, and had no place to live. But I knew I'd figure it out. I arrived on a Wednesday, checked into a hotel. Thursday, I put in applications. Friday, they told me I had the job. Friday afternoon, I got an apartment. Friday night, I checked out and drove to Tijuana, because I'd never been there. Explored Tijuana. It was great going in, not so much coming out. There's a lot of stuff when you're walking out of Tijuana, you're just like, yeah, I can avoid this. And then I came back in on Monday, moved into my apartment, and started my job. For me, becoming Muslim was not, I avoided a lot of things I think that people who can convert to different religions do. I didn't feel like I was a different person. For me, I felt that I had taken on additional core values. Islam is an Abrahamic faith, which means that they follow all the prophets since Abraham. Technically, since Adam. I don't know why we always say Abrahamic faith. Didn't Adam come first? But we follow all those prophets. We're Moses and everything. We believe in the Bible. We believe in the Torah. The problem is, or the difference is, that Muslims will differ on some of the things that were translated in the Bible and Torah from the original texts. But even in the Quran, it validates a lot of things that are in the Bible and the Torah as factual, and then builds on those. So for me, I just felt like I took on this additional information, like personal growth type stuff, and you go to school and you learn new things, and you start having new ideas based on those new things. And that's what Islam did for me. A lot of Muslims, when they convert to Islam, they'll change their name, for example. They're taking on a new identity. And I never had that. I kept my name. My mom gave it to me, and I happened to like it. There was no conflict with the name. It didn't have a negative meaning. So I continued to be Deidre. Actually, the other day, someone asked me, so is Deidre a Muslim name? And I said, well, it is now. It's just the things we do. Additionally, a lot of Muslims, will take on a different form of dress, something that, we in the West would consider a foreign dress. They're perfectly able to do that in Islam. It's not a requirement. Islam just requires that all people, not just women, dress modestly, and modestly is defined as not wearing clothes that show the shape of your body and your skin of your private areas. Women's private areas, basically, from the neck down. Women or men, actually, with women, it's from the waist down. So evidently, I can breastfeed in front of every one of you, and that's not a problem. For men, it's the waist to the knees, the navel to the knees. So you're not supposed to see a lot of Muslim men wearing shorts that are above the knee. That's not to say you don't. You do. People choose to dress however they want to. I chose to wear the scarf. That is an interpretation, a personal preference of mine, that I believe that that's something that I need to do. Not all Muslim women do. And there's a debate, right now nationally, there's a debate on reforming Islam, and one of the reforms is for women not to wear the scarf. And I just feel like, I don't want you to tell me to wear the scarf, and I don't want you to tell me not to wear the scarf. Just don't tell me how to dress. That's good for me. I won't tell you. You don't tell me. We're good. When I look at other countries, for example, Saudi Arabia and Iran require the women to wear a scarf, but also there are other countries that have passed laws requiring women not to wear the scarf in government buildings. Turkey did it one time, Tunisia did it one time. And I feel like these are the same thing. Whether you make me or you prohibit me, I don't really care. Just, it's me, leave me alone. I have the same problem with what's going on politically now with all the down with the women stuff I see. If they could just stay out of my bedroom, that'd be great. If they could definitely stay out of my uterus, that'd be great. But anyway, the other just random information is the thing that I learned about only people in the Middle East are Muslim is entirely not true. Not everybody in the Middle East is Muslim. And definitely the majority of Muslims are not from the Middle East. Only 18 to 20% of the entire Muslim population is from the Middle East. So how they got to be the poster child for what I'm supposed to be, I have no idea. But statistically, they don't have that right. For the women, Islam does give a very huge status for women. Women were, in the Quran, it actually gives the women the right to vote 1,400 years ago. It gave the women the right to inherit. It gave the women the right to work. It gave women the right to keep their own money when they work. Women are not required to supplement the household income. That is the man's responsibility. So any money that the woman gets belongs to her and her alone, although she could always give charity to the household. And that's what it is, it's charity. So they don't have to walk 2 steps behind the men. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if somebody just decided to bash the Muslims, or if maybe there was some cultural thing going on in the Middle East at the time. I don't know. There are a lot of cultural problems. A lot of people who mix up culture and religion, which causes us personally problems, especially the women. But they're contrary to Islam. My favorite one, I'll tell you this because it's my favorite one. I want to blog on it so bad, I just haven't got around to it. Women driving or not driving. That is like my pet peeve. I'm just like, are you serious? So Saudi Arabia is the only country out of 54 majority Muslim countries in the world, only 17 of which are in the Middle East. Saudi's the only country that doesn't allow women to drive. But let's go through that analysis. The analysis is that if the majority of drivers are men, and the majority of drivers are solo drivers. So as you drive, if you have an accident, there's a high likelihood that you're going to run into another sole driver, and a high likelihood that the sole driver is going to be male. So as a woman, if you drive and you have a wreck, you're most likely going to have a wreck with a man. So now you're alone with the man and unprotected. And then you're probably, maybe if you're lucky, you'll call the police. The police are usually men. Actually, in Saudi, they are men. So you now are alone with 2 men who could take advantage of you. So the solution to this problem is that we don't allow women to drive. But the further solution to this problem is all the women have drivers. All the drivers are male. None of the drivers are men of their family, and the majority of affairs happen with their driver. So we haven't solved any problem. We've created a bigger one, but it makes somebody feel good somewhere. And just to let you know, during the Prophet's time, women led wars. They were warriors. They were at the front lines, and they drove camels all by them lonesome, even on caravans by themselves. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the first wife he had was 20 years older than him and his boss. So women can tell men what to do too. Just saying. I had to learn a lot, and that was very important to me. I'm a why person. It's not good enough for you to tell me Islam says X. I not only want to know where you got that, but I want to know why it says X. And that's important to me. And I don't think a lot of people in general, never mind Muslims and never mind religion, I don't think a lot of people do that. But that is something that I do, and that's why I made it a point to constantly learn more and more about the religion and to be able to share that with people in a way that they can understand, I hope. Thank you.
Deidre, thank you so much. That was awesome. I just want to put you in my pocket and take you with me. So when I see a Muslim phobe, I don't know if that's a word, but I see them often, unfortunately, right now. I could just pull you out and be like, meet my friend Deidre, and then have you talk to them. So thank you for coming tonight and talking to us about that and being a woman and being strong. That's awesome. Annie Groth, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight. And when she called me, I said, I got to think about this. How do I introduce Annie Groth? And I had 15 or 20 ways that I could introduce Annie Groth. And I thought, I need to tell everybody the story of how we met and how I ended up here. And so it started on Christmas Day 2009. You make me emotional sometimes. My father passed away, and I was lost. And I remembered 3 days before that, my dad's big financial final planning talk. 3 days before he died. I'd been asking and asking. He had cancer. We knew that he had cancer. He was going to die. But he was not interested in telling me all about this. And I think I know why now. So I sat with him, and these were the 4 things. Sell the house for $365,000, no less, and don't sell it to the asshole that's down the street because he's going to lowball you. Word for word. Pamela knows my father very well. She knows that's exactly what he said. Number 2, sell my business. Number 3, send my car to your cousin in Colorado who needs a new car. And number 4, all of the information that you need to close my estate is in a red folder in the safe. Rock on. No problem. Okay. So I thought, I'm going to make it easier, and I'm going to go from the bottom up. So first, send the car to my cousin, Sean. Oh, first I had to find the red book. So I find the red book. I open it up. And in it is not wife previous, but the previous wife info. And the house address is from a house that I lived in when I was 19 years old. And so I thought, okay, there's got to be another red book. Well, there was a pink book, and there was a yellow book, and there was a blue book, and they were all engineer books, so that was not going to help me. So I kind of went, move that to the side. So then I go to the next thing, send your car to my cousin Shauna. Easy. Then I don't have an insurance payment, one thing off the list. I go to pick up the car at my dad's girlfriend's, who had it in her care, custody, and control, and she had forgotten to tell me that she wrecked it. It had $1,700 worth of problems, and it wasn't drivable. Okay, no problem. I'm moving up. So I'm going to sell my dad's business. That's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to sell my dad's business. That's going to give me the cash flow that I need to float this other stuff. Because mind you, there's $4,000 in the account. That's okay, though. I can do this. My dad tests microcircuits and wafers for semiconductor companies. I don't know if a lot of you have people you can just pull out of your back pocket and say, hey, I want to buy a business. So it wasn't one that was going to be very easy to sell, and it took a while to sell. And then the house. 2009, what was happening in the market? No one was, not that they could lowball. I mean, screw the 365, Dad. I don't give a crap. We're going to just go down to 275. We're going to go down to 260. We're going to go down to 235. There is Zippo zero no buyers, okay? It's okay. I can do this. I have $4,000 in the account. We don't have a mortgage. Awesome. I'm going to float this. It's New Year. Woohoo! I get all these sweet cards from everyone saying, how are you doing? Along with them, as I'm going through the mail, I get a mortgage statement for a house that was paid off. No, Dad had recently refinanced the home. Hence the reason for needing to sell it for $365,000, no more or less, and not to the asshole down the street. And the next one is a $12,000 credit card bill. Because he had recently took a dream vacation, which I'm so proud that he did, but it was on me. And that was the moment right there that I said, I am not ever going to leave someone right here. But then I didn't know, what am I going to do about that? I don't know what to do. And I met a lot of new faces here today, and you're probably sitting here thinking, I don't really know why I'm here, and there's a bunch of women, and they seem like they're connected, and that's awesome, but I have a really cool friend that I had, Pamela Kingsley, who invited me, so you probably have a really cool friend that invited you to be among really cool women, so it's all good. But I didn't know, and as Deidre said, if this is what God's plan is for me, I'm just going to walk it, and it's all going to work out. Well, it worked out when I met Annie Groth. I came to a few pearls, And I found that person. I was good with my retirement, but when it came to like life planning, if I was struck by lightning, I was hit by a car, and trust me, after this list, totally possible. Those things that I just said, struck by lightning, I knew it could probably happen after going through this. So I got some homework from Annie Groth. I went in and I sat with her. I laid it all out, and we spent almost 4.5 hours together, the big, big picture. And now, every year, I'm given goals, and I better complete them, because trust me, you don't want to like work with Annie Groth and not do what you say you're going to do. Because you don't want to sit at the big table and say, no, I didn't do that. Oh, no, I didn't do that. It's not worth it. Just do it. And I am on track for what I need for retirement. And I also know that all my mom, my husband, my friends have to do is pick up the phone to one person, and Annie Groth will be able to make these 1, 2, 3, 4s non-existent. So let me introduce Annie Groth. If you guys have a need for someone who's going to look at you as the wonderful, powerful, strong, and maybe a little bit confused because of all the crap that we hear out there about what to do with our money, she's going to help get you straight. So feel free to ask me any questions that you have, and I'd love for Annie to come up and tell you more about herself.
I don't know how to follow that. Deidre, thank you. That was just wonderful. I couldn't have asked for more than that. And Allison, thank you very much. Again, I'm glad that you're all here. And every time I get ready to do a Pearls, I always think, what am I going to tell them? Because there are so many people that have heard my talk before, heard what I've had to say before. But one of the things that I always go back to is that sometimes we're not ready to hear it. And I can say the same thing. Statistics tell me that I have to say the same thing to you 10 times, and then maybe you'll get it. So rest assured, for those of you who have heard me speak before, I'm not going to say the same thing in the same order. How many of you read the email and put a calculator on your telephone for tonight? Some of you did. So we're going to play a game. If everybody wants to get their calculator out, we're going to play a game. So what I'd like for you to do is I would like for you to put your annual income in your calculator, and I would like for you to multiply that number from now until the time you're going to retire, how many ever years that is. So I'm going to play the game up here, and I'm going to pretend that we have a salary of $100,000, and it's going to be 15 years until retirement. So that's, would everybody agree, that's $1.5 million. So everybody's going to have a different tax bracket. So what I'd like for you to do is take whatever your number is, and we're just going to use an effective tax rate of 25%. So multiply that times 25% and get your new number. And if anybody needs help, Ellen can help you. Okay, everybody got that number? Everybody got their number after taxes. So think about that number in between now and the time you retire. Now, the next thing is, for many of you know that I am a non-traditional financial planner. I don't believe that what you hear in the media, I don't believe what most planners tell you. I don't think it works. So most traditional planners will tell you that when you retire, you only need between 70 and 80% of your current income in retirement. And I always, you know, my Westies used to turn their head like that when they were trying to understand me. And so when I ask people, how is it that you think you're going to live on 70 or 80% of what you're currently living on? I always get the same answers. My house will be paid off. I won't be working. You know, I'll take less vacations, all those things. So basically, you've worked hard your entire life so you can live less of a life. I mean, that's basically what they're telling me. But let's pretend that they're right. And now I want you to take your net number and I want you to multiply that times 75% or 0.75 and get your new number. Okay? So let's say that you have 15 years in between now and retirement. How long will you live in retirement? Will you live 15 years? Will you live 25? Average life expectancy for women who are my age is about 85 now. For women Allison's age, Nicole's age, Ellen's age, you guys will live well into your 90s and some of you into your hundreds, which means you're going to live as long in retirement as you've lived working. So now you're going to have to live on less money. Fidelity did a study last year that said if you were 65 today, a married couple, between 65 and death, and they placed death at 85, so only 20 years, you would spend $240,000 on Medicare and long-term care, and not including those two things. So your medical costs would be $240,000, not including Medicare or long-term care. So when I hear traditional planners say that you can live on 75% of what your current income is, I just want somebody to tell me how. So here's another question, and I would like to see a show of hands on this. How many of you believe when you retire, you'll be in a lower, higher, or the same income tax bracket you're in today? So lower. So my first question to all of you who said lower, why in the world would you want to be? You've worked hard your entire life. Now you want to live on less money so you can be in a lower tax bracket. The next, how many of you think you'll be in the same? One or two of you. How many of you think you'll be in a higher tax bracket? Me. Why do I think that? In this country, in 1961, when Ronald Reagan switched from being a Democrat to a Republican, he made one of his B movies for $100,000. Our effective marginal tax rate in 1961 in this country was 91%. 9-1. So what does our Congress like to do most? Spend money. They like to spend money, don't they? So how will we be in a lower tax bracket? So this little exercise is something to get you to start thinking about, am I doing what's right? If you're putting a boatload of money into a 401k, a 457, a deferred comp, and you're going to have to pay taxes in retirement, and you're going to be in a higher income tax bracket, why wouldn't you pay your taxes while you're still working? When you're probably in the lowest tax bracket you're ever going to be in, why wouldn't you do that? But traditional planners won't tell you because they want to be your hero today so you can have more take-home pay. I always tell people, listen, if you work with me, you only have to cry once. You don't have to cry for the rest of your lifetime. So how many people in retirement would like to have their home paid off? Right? We'd all like to have our home paid off in retirement. If you have qualified money, again, 401k, IRAs, 457s, deferred comp, all those things, you will have an effective house payment for the rest of your life because you will pay taxes till the day you die. So there are other ways to plan that you can plan efficiently. One of the primary reasons we don't get ahead is because we lose the efficiency of our money. And that's what I really help people begin to understand is the efficiency of their money. How much time do I have, Jill? How many? 3. I'm going to tell you a quick story. And, you know, I had a woman who used to come to my pearls. I haven't seen her in the last 2 pearls. She always used to say to me, Annie, you have to ask for the business. So if you'd like to come see me, I'd like to have you come see me. And Regina will be in the back at the end of pearls taking your names and numbers if you'd like to make an appointment with me. But I'm going to tell you a quick story. yesterday I was on my way home, and there was a woman whom I have seen walking in the neighborhood for 18 years. She lives about 3 blocks from me. And she was pushing her bicycle filled with newspapers and styrofoam cups of a big gulp that had probably been paid for years ago that she still refills. And she was in so much pain. I watched her walk, and I pulled my car over and I asked her if I could help her. And she was afraid, because she'd only seen me. I always waved to her, but I don't think she could probably really see who I was. And she finally looked at me and she said, "I can't hear you." And so, now keep in mind, I live in a nice neighborhood. And this woman, the stench from this woman is something that it'll take me a while to forget. And so I had to get close enough to her to yell in her ear, "Could I take you home? I'll come back and get your bicycle. May I take you home?" No. And so it took us 1 hour to go 1 block. And her feet were in so much pain, she said that there was a hole in the bottom of her sandals and she'd stepped on a rock. And so we got home to her house, and she's got all of her stuff set up in her carport. She doesn't have a garage, she has a carport. And I was worried about her feet, because as many of you know, and for me as a hiker, if my feet hurt, it's not a happy place. For those of you who wear stilettos, I have no idea how you do that. So I asked her if she was going to take care of her feet, and I knew that she wasn't. I asked her again, I said, "Would it be all right if I washed your feet for you?" Because I wanted to see what was wrong with her feet. And so I went home and got everything that I needed to do, and, we got her feet clean, and she was so grateful. And I put lotion on her feet, peroxide, all that stuff. And as I was leaving, she thanked me, and I don't know what you Catholics call this, but she crossed herself and was grateful when I left. And the reason I tell you that story is because one of the things she told me when we were sitting on the park bench, because she had to rest a half block before we got home, is that she used to own the grocery store in Duncan, Arizona, which tells me that she used to have money. And I don't know what she did with it. I didn't ask her. And so, ladies, we're a breath away from something happening. And if you have a boatload of money, if you have a boatload of real estate, if you have a business you're going to sell, you don't know what the future brings, because if you have all that, that doesn't mean you have a plan. It's essential that you make a plan. And I'll end on this. When you come see me, I always tell people judgment is on the other side of the door. There's no judgment when you come to see me, and I'd be delighted to see each and every one of you. Tina, are you here? I'm so happy to see you. Thank you all again so much for being here, and Jill's going to come up and introduce Mel. Thank you.
I encourage you to take Annie up on her offer. I know we talk about our health and well-being as women, and if you saw a medical professional who gave you some disconcerting news, you would seek another opinion. And I know many of you sit in the audience and listen to someone like Annie speak and think, I'm okay, I got a guy. Well, I just suggest that maybe you take a time to hear from another guy, and maybe hear from somebody whose commitment is really to women and their relationship to their money. So it'll be an experience that is free of charge, number one. So there's no fee to go see Annie. So before you leave tonight, make sure you check in with Regina and compare your calendars. So on that note, I'm so pleased to introduce our keynote speaker this evening. This is Melissa Mel Sanderson. She's the Vice President of International Affairs at Freeport-McMoRan. Mel was a member of the U.S. Foreign Service for over 20 years, serving in a multitude of countries and assignments, and her last diplomatic posting was as a political counselor in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, following the end of that country's war and its transition to democracy. In 2006, while still in Congo, she was recruited by Freeport-McMoRan to represent that company as vice president for Africa. She stayed another 4 years in the DRC before accepting a promotion and returning to the Phoenix corporate headquarters in 2010, where she is currently the vice president of international affairs. In this capacity, she works with Freeport's government and public relations functions, as well as with corporate social responsibility group on projects and issues relevant to Freeport's overseas operations in Chile, Peru, Indonesia, and Congo, as well as Native American issues here in the U.S. Mel is currently the president of the Phoenix Committee on Foreign Relations, the chair of the Arizona District Export Council, and on the boards of the Arizona-Mexico Commission, the Arizona Council for Economic Education. She is also a member of GPEC's International Leadership Council, the Phoenix Community Alliance, the Retired Foreign Service Employees Association, and the American University Women's Association. She was named an Athena Award winner for the private sector in 2015 by the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, and was awarded the Global Business Executive of the Year 2015 by the Glober Chamber, and was one of Phoenix Business Journal's 25 Dynamic Women in Business in 2014. Please help me warmly welcome Mel Sanderson.
I'm not sufficiently technological to use my phone like Deirdre did, so I had to ask Jill to kind of hiss at me after about 25 minutes so I would start to shut up. Aha, there is more mobility. Good, because I am a mobile person. So as you heard, basically I spent most of my life not living in my own country. And tonight I want to talk to you about women, despair, courage, and hope around the world. And I'm going to start with the despair, because I think it's probably easiest to start from the depths, work our way up. So, we are so fortunate to live where we live. But Deirdre's right, we need to make sure that we fight continuously to keep what we got, because like Annie's story, we can lose it. All around the world, women don't have what we have. In the Congo, they still practice female genital mutilation. Talk about having them in your uterus. That's practiced in many countries around the world. Most of them African, a few of them not. In many countries of the world, girls don't get an education. And I don't mean you don't get to graduate high school. I mean you don't get to go to school. You get to go and collect the water or the firewood so that your brother can go to school, because everybody knows that when you grow up, your role in life is reproduction and fetching the water and getting the firewood and cooking. That's what you do. But boys have to be educated because they're going to have a job to support your worthless self. Not even a chance. In many cultures, you are told that even your children are not yours. Your children belong to your husband. They just happen to have emerged magically from inside of you, but they belong to your husband. It's the power of his penis that made them possible. Had nothing to do with you. What a miracle. But what that also means, ladies, is there's plenty of countries where women don't feel connected to their children. And what that leads to in many cases is selling your child. I want to talk for a minute about trafficking. A scourge in the world and a shame in this country. And as we have heard over the last few years, thanks to Cindy McCain and others, particularly a shame in this state. And yeah, the problem is partly demand. Men who think that that's exciting. to possess a child in that way. And believe me, it's about possession. It's about power. It doesn't have that much to do with the actual sexual act. It has to do with owning. And in too many instances, that's a mother who sold a daughter. Sold a daughter. Why would a mother sell a daughter? Number one, maybe that daughter isn't hers. She's taught. This child isn't even mine. It's my husband's. I must sell my husband's belongings. But mostly, it's about economics. Those uneducated women are not bringing home good salaries. They're frequently, if they bring something home, it's taken from them. So they have multiple children. If their husband leaves them, which happens a lot. Heck, even in this country, it happens a lot, right? You get to be 40, you're not 21 anymore, you're not 18. Husband's tired of you, he wants a trophy bride. So these uneducated, poor women, hardworking women, are then stuck with 8 kids because even though the culture says they belong to the husband, he doesn't take them with him. Oh my God, that would be shocking. Who would want to saddle their beautiful young bride with the 8 children from the ugly old hag? The ugly old hag gets to keep them. So you sell your oldest daughter to have food for the other 7. That's reality. Another reality is, let's go to Russia. Another reality that I saw firsthand. The Department of State asked me to go directly from Poland to Russia, and they said, oh, you don't need to study Russian. You speak Polish, it's all the same. Okay, that's like saying you speak Spanish, you don't need to study French because it's all the same. That wasn't working out so well, so the embassy sent me to a town in Russia called Tver. Tver, at one point, was the capital of Russia. Today, it's a ruin, like many of the Russian cities are, outside of Moscow or St. Petersburg. And I was living with a family there, which was a whole other story because I loved living with my family there, except it turns out that the father was actually a spy, but that's another whole story. But what was really interesting was my language school was in the same building as a bride factory. So all of these gorgeous, tall, shapely Russian girls were trotting in and out of that building all day long. Aside from making me feel inferior, it made me curious. Where are they going? What are they doing? They studying English? What? So one day I went to a floor in the building I'd never been to before, and I discovered that they were registering their online portfolios to acquire a rich foreign husband and live happily ever after, selling themselves. Same core problem. No future. No jobs, no hope. Now, in many cases, these are highly educated girls. They've gone to the university. They, by rights, should be doctors or lawyers. But the way Russia is today, there's not enough of those kinds of jobs to go around and men get preference. So the girls sell themselves. Let me tell you something about the worst form of trafficking that I ever saw in my life, which was also in Russia. I used to drive around the country a lot for my job. And I would see these semi-tractor trailers parked by the side of the road, and I thought, my God, the trucks break down a lot in this country. Haven't they ever heard of maintenance? Imagine my shock when one day one of my colleagues at the embassy told me, those are the traveling whorehouses. And the fresh meat comes from the villages. And the fresh meat is 8 years old. In semi-tractor trailer trucks traveling the highways of Russia. Mothers selling daughters. in a country where you wouldn't think it would happen. You say, oh yeah, that's Thailand. We've all read about Thailand. That goes on all the time in Thailand. Africa. Oh, those poor Africans are always selling something, including their families. Russia. This is despair. This is the depths of despair. When you don't know that you have another choice. So let's talk about courage. Let's talk about women in the Congo. The Eastern Congo has been called, and rightly so, the rape capital of the world. Didn't used to be that way. The Congolese tribes, kind of like what Deirdre was saying about in the Quran, traditionally, Congolese tribes had great respect for women, and many tribes were and are matrilineal. But you know, there was this war in the Congo, and neighboring states introduced the oh so delightful concept of rape as a weapon of war. Because women were so respected in the Congo. A mother is the heart of the family. And if you want to destroy Congolese culture, destroy the women. One day, early on in my time in the Congo, I was asked to go and speak to a group of women in Eastern Congo. They were rape survivors. And let me just parenthetically make a point here. They had not just survived penetration by a male penis. They had survived penetration by things like rifles, broken Coke bottles, etc. Many of them had a condition called fistula. Now, here's some people who know what that is. That can kill you if the shock of what you went through didn't. And these ladies wanted to meet with me. And you know, it's tradition in the Congo. You always honor the visitor. So the most senior lady stood up and made all these laudatory comments about what an honor it is to have Madam Ambassador, because of course, you're always an ambassador. Madam Ambassador is here to speak to us today. And all the women went, giving honor. When I finally got to stand up, I said, you know what? I honor you. You're living a life that I would not survive. I'm not strong enough. I would be laying in a ditch in a fetal position, sobbing. And these ladies go out to their fields, to the streams to get the water, to the forest to get the wood, and you know what? They go singing. They have hope and belief that somehow it's going to get better tomorrow. This is why I always tell people I am never giving up on the Congo. As long as I know that those women are out there facing danger, facing pain, facing possible death, and they're doing it singing. Because that kind of hope can never be left alone. Never. So where am I going with this? Here's what I think. And it's funny, I was talking to Candy, there you are. Talking to Candy, who's now going to get embarrassed, before our event started. And thank you, Annie, for introducing me to her. She's currently living in Burkina Faso. So that's a tough place to live. She went there voluntarily, and she's doing something that I consider absolutely crucial: economic development work. She's working with the women in that country, teaching them how to convert soybeans into tofu. Soybeans to tofu to hope. Because if you have a livelihood in a country like Burkina Faso, then you have hope. Then you have the potential to defy tradition that says it's okay to send your daughter to be mutilated. It's okay. You have to sell your daughter. What can you do about it? When you have some kind of hope to hang on to, you will fight for your future. And that's what our children are, and particularly our daughters. It's our future. Kudos to Candy. Best of luck. So I think we need to look at two things, is what I'd like to bring up. First one I'd like to bring up is this idea of economic empowerment. We hear a lot about it. And there's a lot of good efforts going on around the world. USAID sponsors a lot. The British DFID sponsors a lot. All of the aid agencies sponsor a lot of good activities. Here's what frequently happens. Those guys don't actually do business. They don't actually do sustainable economic development. Concrete example, let's go back to the Congo. That's where I lived the longest, 8 years. USAID had a really good, potentially good program. They were trying to convince men to not be soldiers anymore, and women who had started out as sex slaves to these various militia to leave that life because they had segued into being killers and soldiers and come back to civilian life. So for the men, they were giving them a hoe, 2 bags of seeds, and a parcel of land. Okay, that's great, except who are they going to sell the produce to? Because they're living out in the middle of nowhere in a country where all the roads were destroyed in the wars. So if I've grown a bunch of lettuce, there's nobody to sell to except people in my village, and they all got the same bag of seeds. So they're all growing the same lettuce. Women got a sewing machine. That's great. There's probably something like 10 million women in the Congo now have sewing machine. Same problem. Who are they supposed to be selling the beautiful clothes that they'd make to? So particularly, for we lucky women here in the United States, I want us to think about, is there a way, maybe through the power of the internet, that we can use our collectivity to make that market? Because there's plenty of ways to reach out overseas through these organizations. Candy's working with Peace Corps, USAID, etc., to find these organizations, to find these women who are making something and figure out how to help them. So I want to put that idea out there because really having a job, which is something that we frequently either take for granted or complain about, is like heaven in most other countries for women. Second thing I want to toss out is, and I want to be clear that I'm not trying to supersede any initiatives that are already underway. I'm talking about supplementing them. Why don't we all get together and suggest something like Mothers for Daughters? So I had lots of these talks with African women because mamas everywhere in the world still have a certain power. Even in Eastern Congo, the rape capital of the world, mamas still have terrific power. What is that power? We teach the children. How often did I say to my African girlfriends, stop teaching your sons that they're superior. Stop treating your boys as if they're the only gift that you got from God. Start having your boys do some chores around the house. And definitely fight to send your daughter to school. They get it. And a lot of them are working now together. The power of women together. One of the most inspirational groups in the world started in Russia, Mothers Against War. This was back when the Russians and the Chechens were at each other's throats. And kind of like today, as Deirdre was referencing, all Muslims are bad Muslims, kill them all and let their gods sort them out. Russian attitude towards Chechens, who happen to be predominantly a Muslim group. And yet, one day, one woman said, I'm standing here crying over my son. And somewhere in Chechnya, a mother is standing crying over her son. Why? Because my government says they're evil? Because their leaders say we're evil? We are two women crying for our sons. That was the start of Mothers Against War. It rose again in Colombia. It rose again in El Salvador. Mothers for daughters. Mothers Against War. Why not? I also want to pick up on something that Deirdre said. It's really troubling to me, and I don't know. Yes, we do. We have some millennials out there. The reason I'm singling out millennials, the rest of us who are not millennials probably remember, because it wasn't that long ago, in the 1960s and 70s in the United States, the rise of a feminist movement. The rise of a group of women who said, men don't get to tell me what to do with my uterus. Men don't get to tell me that it's my fault I got raped because I had the nerve to leave the office late and my blouse was cut too low. Men don't get to say that. They started saying equal pay for equal work, which, by the way, we're not there. Still doesn't exist. Still not getting that. We got a lot of other things, though. We got a change in the way police behave, for instance. When I was growing up, when I was a girl in the 1970s, if you heard some man wailing away on his wife down the street, even if you called the cops, even if the cops came, what they said to the guy was, keep down the noise, you're bothering the neighbors. Not, let us help the woman. Because, hey, what's between a man and his wife? It says right there in the Bible, man's got to discipline his wife. It's part of his God-given rights. It's his duty to discipline his woman. We have come a long way standing on the shoulders of women who fought for it before us. When I joined the Foreign Service in 1985, one of the very first things they did was they handed me a piece of paper and said, you are now a member of the class action suit against the Department of State. And I was like, okay. Well, a group of women 3 years previously had filed an action against the department saying that the department was systemically discriminating on the basis of gender by putting women into the consular function. The consular function, that's the group of people that basically they refuse visas. Sometimes they give out a visa. Most of the time they refuse visas. In the State Department hierarchy of the 4 generalist areas, it is the least important. It is the one which very rarely produces an ambassador. So therefore, by putting women into these particular specialties, they were pretty much guaranteeing women couldn't rise to the top. So by virtue of having these nice endowments, I got registered for the suit. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And you know what? They won. That was huge. Their careers were ruined. My career was made. We need to think about that. This rhetoric that we're hearing these days, it's not idle talk. There's so much anger in our country right now, so much anger. And part of that anger is turning against we women. I kid you not, I have heard guys say, women shouldn't be voting. They've ruined this country. Well, since we've never even had a woman president yet, I'm not sure how we could have ruined this country. Seems to me that must have been our male leadership that's been doing a good job of it. But my key point here is we are blessed. Blessed. But we don't get to keep those blessings by taking them for granted. We need to help ourselves, and to the extent possible, we need to help other women too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mel. Ladies, I just want to remind you to be jotting your questions down onto your 3x5 cards for Annie, Mel, and Deidre. And when you have completed them, just pass them to the aisles and we'll collect them.
So thank you all for listening to this just wonderful commentary. The next person I'd like to bring up, and some of you may or may not know this, I'm on the board of directors for the YWCA here in Phoenix. And we have the CEO here this evening, Regina Edwards, and the topic couldn't be any better for YWCA being our benefactor, because our mission is to eliminate racism and to empower women. And again, thank you for all of you who brought gifts for the Senior Center tonight. And you can always go onto the website and donate because we serve a lot of women. And I'm going to let Regina tell you a little bit about the YWCA.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie. And first of all, a big round of applause for Annie Groth and Jill Mapstead, who do serve on the YWCA board. If you could join me. Annie and Jill are part of a group of wonderful women who are part of a local, national, and international organization. The YWCA, in case you don't know, is that organization. If you look at ywca.org, you'll see that we are around the world, around the nation, and we're here in Phoenix. And we're so grateful for those of you that brought donations this evening. They'll help our senior center. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about a couple of our programs, but feel free to also go to our website, which is ywcaaz.org. When we think about economic empowerment, when we think about women, and we think about what we can do, what we do here in our community is we really start with the individual woman. One of our programs is called Own It. It's a financial education program for that woman that maybe isn't quite ready to come see Annie yet because she's not even sure how she's going to make her rent, or she's not even sure if she can buy lunch for her children. It's a very powerful program for us because we do it in tandem with other organizations. At any point in time, we're working with 50 or 60 other nonprofits in the community. We provide the program at no cost to those organizations and their clients, and by doing that, we increase the financial stability of our community, one woman, one family at a time. One of the most important aspects of the program is that we know when we talk to those women and their families 6 to 9 months after, more than 75% of them are now meeting their goals. Not only are they meeting their goals, but when you teach a woman about financial stability, she's going to teach her children. So that helps all of us in our community. And the wonderful program that so many of you brought donations to this evening is our senior program. The majority of the women who come to us for their daily meal are women. These are women in the West Valley, in Glendale, and El Mirage. They might still be able to get on the Dial-A-Ride bus and come join us at one of our senior centers, or they might be homebound. And for the homebound women, we have drivers who bring to them much more than a meal. Every day they bring them a hot meal at lunch, but they also bring them a caring smile, and many times that might be the only individual that they see during the day. That also enhances our community because it keeps those individuals safe and independent and in their homes. There are 2 other programs that are coming up. If you go to our website, we'd like to have your input and love to have you be part of. One is Equal Pay Day, which is going to be a virtual day for us this year. That's on April 12th, but as so many of the speakers already alluded to, we're a long way away. It's still 79 cents across the country. Here in Arizona, it's 84 cents. So we have a lot of work to do in that area. We have a class that we would like all of you to think about taking, no matter where you are in your career, on salary negotiation. One of the best ways to work on the wage gap is for you to know how you can negotiate, and then for you to teach and tell your friends and your daughters and everyone else in the community. The other program that we're doing this year, first time ever, we're joining with our group in Tucson, is Stand Against Racism. On April 29th, we're going to have a series of conversations across the state, Tucson, here in Phoenix, and in northern Arizona, conversations about race. So right now we're looking for partners. If you'd like to hold those conversations somewhere in your community, at your office, your church, anywhere that you work, play, or live in your neighborhood, let us know. Again, just go to our website, or I'll be out back afterwards. But we'd love to have you engage with the YWCA. Thank you.
This is a nice broad one. I think maybe we'll start with this so that each of you can answer this. Do you consider yourself a feminist? Why or why not?
Damn Skippy. I'm feminist all the way. I think that the label itself has gotten a bad rep. I think some people have defined it inaccurately. Being a feminist does not mean that I'm not anti-men. I believe that women can do anything and everything. We need to have more information so we can be more empowered and make better decisions. But the whole idea that feminist means that, I'm opening up a whorehouse or something, that's just not going to work for me. That just doesn't have anything to do with it.
Absolutely, I'm a feminist. I'm a feminist because both of my parents, including especially my dad, taught me that it's a good thing to be a girl, that they were proud to have a daughter, and that daughter could do anything and be anything and go anywhere and do anything. So yeah, definitely a feminist.
When I was a little girl, my grandmother raised me. My grandmother, who was 52 years old on a fixed income, and we lived in a town, population 437. And I didn't know what feminist meant. And then we moved to Garden City, Kansas, when I was in the 6th grade. So how old are you in the 6th grade? 11. And then in 1968, I would have been 13. Most the younger people were not born. But anyway, in 1968 was when women really started burning their bras to say that, we were feminists and we had a life and we could do as we pleased. And I was pretty tiny back then. I'm not sure I had a bra to burn, but I would have burned it. So the answer to that question is yes.
A resounding yes. So Deirdre, I want to start with you. Would you share, on a very personal level, what it is like and what it has been like for you to be a Muslim woman in Arizona?
First of all, I would say that I have a different experience than other Muslim women in Arizona. And the reason why I'll say that is, point blank, I'm white. I have an accent that people are expecting the accent, just not the one I give them. So, I get away with a lot. I also forget that I look different. I forget that I wear the scarf. Sometimes I'm at home and my husband says, "Are you going somewhere?" And I'm like, "No, why?" He's like, "Because you still have your scarf on." I forget that I look different. So therefore, I don't have any preconceived notion that I am different. So if someone's staring at me, I don't think it has anything to do with me. I don't assume that they hate me. Occasionally I'll notice that they're looking, or usually somebody with, like my husband, people are staring at you. Okay, it'd be the same thing if I had a purple mohawk. I do look different. It's not a big shock. when people are, mean or rude, there's a million reasons why I think that they're mean and rude that have absolutely nothing to do with me. I've gone through like 20 of them before I'm like, oh shit, they don't like Muslims. That's just me. However, I work with a lot of Muslims in Arizona, and a lot of women get crap. And the reason why they get crap is because we have a symbol. We have a symbol on the ones that wear the scarf have a symbol on our head. We're immediately recognized as something. These days, it's so funny because people are so scared of offending me by calling me a Muslim. They'll say, "Are you Sikh?" I'm thinking, wow, you went to minority. But they're just so worried, or they'll ask me if I'm a nun, and I'm thinking, wow, nuns have progressed. But we do. I mean, some people do treat Muslim women poorly, whether they're wearing the scarf or not, and it's usually out of not just even hate. Sometimes it's just out of ignorance. I have a belief that people have a radar, and if you have any kind of self-esteem issue, they feel it and they come after you. And I don't really have that, so I guess I get to avoid that too. But it can be difficult that they assume that we're uneducated. They assume that we can't speak English. They assume that we're stupid. And they assume that we're already oppressed so they can jump on board. And so that's what I would say that most Muslim women actually do experience, whether it's Arizona or not. And with all the rhetoric, or anytime something happens like San Bernardino, I mean, the women who wear the scarf are particularly concerned. Men get away with it a lot more because half the time you don't know who's a Muslim or not. After September 11th, my husband put on a floppy hat and started speaking Spanish. I mean, they can get away with that. I can't. So for me, I feel that I am the exception, but most Muslim women, they have it harder.
There's a question from the audience that asked if you were ever afraid of being attacked because you wear a scarf.
Since I forget that I wear the scarf, I'm more worried if somebody's going to rape me, but I don't really worry about that either, so, I'm just a woman. I don't really spend that much time on it, but I truly forget that I wear the scarf, so I grew up here. I still have the mentality that I'm the white girl in Arkansas, so the biggest thing for me is sexism, and it's still alive and kicking, but it's a lot worse in the South than here. So I don't think that I personally worry about it, but a lot of women, yes, a lot of women, after incidents or when rhetoric gets really bad, they are scared to leave the house.
So this is really for all three of you. What is the difference for you between what we think of ourselves, our self-perception, and how others see us, the external perception, as it relates to racism and sexism in the world today?
I actually think that I've been really fortunate because, like Deirdre, I'm white. So my only drawback is I'm a woman. But I have to say that, at least for me personally, I have always had great male mentors. It's sad but true. I've never had a female mentor. My experience, unfortunately, with women both in the diplomatic service and in business has been that we women tend to claw each other down rather than build each other up. So I would say that on a personal level, I really haven't had gender-related issues to any significant extent.
I think it's when you're white and you live in this country, I think it's far more subtle when you experience it. I work in an industry that's predominantly male. I work in an industry that women don't succeed very often in. And although I don't understand why, because women are, and please don't take offense to this, Nate or Dave, our two men who are here helping with our evening, women are far more sensitive to each other's needs. And whether it's in the financial world, in any kind of respect, I think we're far more sensitive. But I do know that if you're 6'2" and you're male, you get different privilege than I get. I have a friend who I always tell her, she's very beautiful, and I always tell her, you know, you're 5'10", you're blonde, you're beautiful, you have a smile that won't end for days. You get treated differently than I do. And it's just a sad state of fact. But as Deidre said a minute ago, you know, I think it's all based on our self-worth. And I happen to think that I'm pretty terrific.
Yay, we do too.
I actually forgot the question, but I had something had come to my mind when she said it. So I'll just make it quick. I think that the biggest thing that hurts us is our assumptions on other people. I think that makes us unhappy and everybody else unhappy. I think that if we could do our best to get to know other people instead of making immediate snap judgments on people, that would make our interactions with each other and our ability to promote or at least not oppress each other would be better. And I'm totally with what you were talking about on so many things, but one of the biggest thing is the thing about oppression. We don't have really male oppressing female here in this country anymore because the females have taken over the job.
So Mel, this one is for you. Can you share with us how you came to be this person who has such a deep appreciation for cultures and the importance of respecting those traditional structures while simultaneously advocating for their advancement or change?
Interesting, because it's actually two separate questions related, yes, but separate. I got my appreciation for the beauty of culture from my parents. I'm first generation American. My daddy came from England and mommy from Ireland. And they almost weren't allowed to get married, to talk about oppression, because my Irish family were IRA. And certainly for the IRA, you don't go around marrying bloody Brits. Fortunately for my dad, he was a Catholic bloody Brit, so he was an oppressed minority also. So that plus the 12 cats that my grandfather owned, rest his soul, helped solidify the marriage. But it started there, and then when I was a girl, and still a little girl, like about 7 or 8, our neighbor was this incredibly interesting person to me. She was kind of stout, and she wore black every day, and she had this funny black thing on her head every day. And she certainly wasn't speaking English. So, curious little girl, self-confident, full of self-worth, I walked over to her garden and stared at her. And she kindly addressed me. Buenos dias. ¿Qué quieres, querida? This was how I started learning Spanish from Mrs. Martinez, who was a widow from Madrid, which is why I speak that kind of Spanish. So it started for me as a little girl, and that was a happy circumstance. Living out in the world in other cultures and seeing how sometimes, not always, but sometimes culture is used as a weapon is what led me to begin advocating for changes. And it's certainly not easy because in many cases, those aspects of culture are the ones that, particularly men, cling to the hardest because, again, it's about power, or at least an illusion of power.
So Annie, this one's for you in light of our topic today of racism awareness and discrimination. What is your insight and advice as to why you focus so much of your business on women and their relationship to money?
That's the $1 million question. 30 years maybe. That's the $1 million question. You all are a tough lot. It was a tough decision to make the choice to work primarily with women. You're scared, not all of you, but a lot of you are scared. You've still got that voice in the back of your head. What did my dad tell me? What did Sam tell me? What did the I Got a Guy tell me? So you listen to that voice, and then someone comes and tells you something different. And it makes you question the context of how you think about things. And you know that there's some part of you intuitively that knows that what I'm talking to you about is right. Doesn't make it easy. And so you begin to question. Just like we change everything, we begin to question. And if I could say one thing to women about your money, it's like Mel said, with the women all having sewing machines and no one to sell anything to. But they still have that drive and desire to get ahead. They still have that drive and desire to make something of value, not just for other people, but for themselves, because we all feel a sense of pride when we complete something. But if I could tell you one thing, is take action today. Don't wait for tomorrow. There used to be, for some of you who get emails from me, you'll notice every now and again I change my signature line. And for years, my signature line was, how soon not now becomes never. I'll do it when I sell my business. I'll do it when I get my inheritance. I'll do it when I'm finished with school. I'll do it when my husband says it's okay. Pretty soon, you run out of time. A true financial exponential curve is 30 years. That doesn't mean if you have 10 years or if you have 5 years that you can't make change. You can. Because the thing that hurts us the most, of what I said earlier, is the lack of efficiency of our money. Well, if you don't even understand what that means, the inefficiency of your money, how can you make it work? So I'm passionate about someone not ending up like my neighbor or my 52-year-old grandmother who had already had her first heart attack. Her husband had died before I even met him. He died in 1948. I didn't ever get to meet Grandpa Smith. And here she was, 52 years old, on a fixed income. She didn't drive, and she got 2 toddlers. So my entire life has been making sure that that's not going to be my life. And so for those of you who are dependent upon, I got a guy, whether it's your boyfriend, your husband, your dad, whomever it is that you've got tweeting in your ear, like Jill said earlier, come get a second opinion. It doesn't hurt to come get a second opinion. And then you have something to base it upon. Because mine isn't based on opinion. I use a very sophisticated model that works in facts, not opinion.
So I'm going to dovetail onto that, Annie, because this is a question from the room. What do you say to divorced women and widows who are looking for men to marry and take care of them in their old age? Besides, good luck with that.
I know who asked that question.
Does he have an appointment with you?
Listen, there's no magic bullet out there, and especially in the form of, I got a guy. You have to take care of yourself. I know that there's someone for everyone out there. Me included, I'm single. I've been single for a couple of years. And I know that right someone is out there somewhere, but I am not going to make that right someone my be-all, end-all everything, and especially not my be-all, end-all financial. I met with a woman today, very successful, married and divorced, has a 9-year-old child, and she makes, I don't know, close to $200,000 a year, and she lost everything in her divorce. Everything. I met with a woman last week who had 9 rental properties, almost all paid off, that she started for and lost it in her divorce because she didn't know how to protect herself. So again, it's about making sure, I don't care if it's a man, I don't care if your persuasion is loving women, I don't care who it is, you have to be responsible for you. I met with a company the other day, and one of the women, my husband takes care of that. And I said, well, what do you know if something happens to him? Crickets. Because she doesn't know. So make sure you don't get caught that way.
So this is for each of you. When we are exhausted and we're overwhelmed, it can feel next to impossible to feel inspired to improve our situations around money, around politics, in our relationships, or community change. Would each of you suggest just one way that we can move through that overwhelm and that inner conflict and take action to improve and restore our financial circumstances, our community actions, or our relationships?
You know, you're right. I mean, whoever asked the question is right. I mean, yes, we all get those moments. I get those moments too. I sometimes say to myself, is this like what they call that polar depression or whatever it is? So sometimes I ask myself that. But what helps me is I think about not just those ladies in the Congo, not just women in Russia. I think about my mom. She was an incredibly shy person. They've recently discovered that it actually is a disease, the level of shyness that she had. And, you know, she had to go out every day and go to work pressing clothes in a dry clean factory because my daddy, who was a truck driver, had had an accident and broken his back. So she didn't have the luxury to stay home and be shy. She had to get on a bus surrounded by all those strangers, and then she had to go to work every day. So when I get those moments and I think to myself, good Lord, I'm being crushed, I just think about my mommy and I start putting one foot in front of the other. Go forward.
From a spiritual aspect, I would say that I truly believe in meditation, and I truly believe in gratitude and doing gratitude exercises, and I think that is like one of the number one ways to get you out of this. On a practical level, I feel like the biggest problem that with every single person on the face of the earth is they do not know themselves. I spend every spare moment that I can getting to know me. I think I'm really interesting. And I think every single person should find themselves so. And there's just so many things we don't know about ourselves. I mean, you know, how do I find a man and fall in love? I don't know. Who's going to fall in love with you if you don't know who you are? How are you going to recognize that person? How are you going to have boundaries? How are you going to know what's okay and what's not okay? How are you going to know what you expect in life if you don't know you? So my number one thing is get to know you. And my number two thing is have some friends. Even if I'm married, I've been married 17 years. I think my husband is a dream. I could spend 24 hours a day with him. I love him so much. And I have girlfriends, and I tell him to go to his guy friends. It's healthy.
Those are great answers. My thing for all of us is tell yourself the truth. And as Deidre said, get to know yourself, because sometimes you don't know what the truth is, right? I always say that, you know, I'm a champion at making stuff up. I've got a box of gold medals. I can make stuff up and make it be true. But that's part of every morning I get up at 4:30. And when I get up at 4:30, I meditate for 30 minutes. And then I either walk my puppies or go hike or go to the gym or do whatever it is that I do. But I do not start a day without meditation because it calms my inner being. And it took me probably in my 5th year understanding what it meant when I would say to myself to bring myself back to center, as Thomas Merton talks about, be still and know that I am God, to understand what that meant. So it's just, again, it's about tell yourself the truth.
Deidre, this is a question from the room. How old were you when you became a Muslim?
I became a Muslim in 98. I was born in 71. I believe that makes me 27.
27. Yeah. So can you answer for me too, as long as you have the mic? Can you share how your experience as an estate attorney contributes to that passion you have for social change?
I can tell you what it made me discover about myself. listening to Annie, I mean, I can tell you story after story of women who have come to me because I'm well known in different communities. They come to me and they want to talk about the different problems that they're going through, and one of them sometimes is divorce. And I can't tell you the number of women that or death, that their spouse has died or they've had a divorce, and they've been married 17 years and don't know how to write a check or pay their bills. And I even had one where I said, I was trying to help her get a divorce, and another attorney was handling it, but I was trying to help her, and I said, you need to write down your bank account information. And she said, I don't know the bank account information. And I said, just the bank, because he can subpoena that. And she was like, I don't know what bank. And I was like, have you ever been to the bank with him? And she said, yes. And I said, what color was the sign? I mean, this is literally the position that I find and this girl was probably born in about 71. So we're not talking, women from a different generation. The new generation, I'm with you. The millennials, y'all got to get it together. I am scared. My mom already fought these fights. I don't want to fight them again. And nothing was given to you. They won't give it back. Okay? Okay, anyway, so back to the story. Sorry, pet peeve, soapbox. No, really, what I found in estate planning was, in estate planning, like financial advising, you really get deep into people's stuff. And I found that I was spending so much time counseling them on having better relationships and having better marriages and how to interact with their children better and how to meditate and how to have better self-esteem and get to know themselves, that I was spending more time on these aspects than I was the law, and I was only getting paid for the law part. So I'm actually branching out more into more motivational speaking and social justice and that kind of thing, because being an estate planner has actually forced me to understand that my purpose in life is not just to protect people's future assets, but to help them protect their life on a personal level.
So this is the last question for each of you. Would you each share one story that you've told yourself in the past that stopped you from taking action in these areas of money and finances and social justice? And was there anything that happened to create a turning point in how you thought about that story differently?
Would you like to go first? She very adroitly
it's
passed
really
the
two
microphone
parts.
down
So
to me.
the first part is one story that you've told yourself in the past that stopped you from taking action in these life areas that we're talking about tonight. And then the second piece was there anything that happened to create a turning point in how you now think about that story differently?
Actually, I think I want to kind of turn that a little bit, because I, honest to God, can't remember a moment when I didn't think I should do the right thing, which essentially to me is what that question is about. Yes. I would rather tell a story about how I got confirmation that I should always do the right thing. If you didn't already intuit this, I think I had really exceptional parents. And one of the things that my parents were vehemently against was racism. And I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, at a time when the Ku Klux Klan was in every neighborhood, burning their crosses and wearing their little white hoodies. So it was extraordinary in its own way to have parents who said that it was all malarkey. And right down the street from us lived Davy Concepcion, who was a very famous baseball player at the time with the Cincinnati Reds, and was a man of color because he had come from Puerto Rico, I believe. And my daddy was great friends with him. We felt like it was an honor to have him in our neighborhood. Well, even within families, you get different points of view, right? So my cousins had not received the same sort of upbringing as I. So one day, my Aunt Catherine and her husband and her youngest son, my cousin Mark, came over to visit us. And Mark and I went outside, and Mark happens to glance over, and he says, "Oh, I didn't know you had niggers living in your neighborhood." And I picked up a rock, and I had to jump to do it because he was already over 6 foot tall, and I hit him right alongside the head with the rock. And while the blood was gushing, I jumped into my daddy's car and slammed the locks down and put my hand on the horn because I knew I was going to need help because he had the rock and he was going to break the window. And all the adults came zooming out of the house. And of course, Mark's standing there gushing blood. He's clearly the victim. And my daddy goes. So I get out and I get up in front of my daddy, and Mark is yelling, "She hit me with a rock!" Daddy says, "Did you hit him with a rock?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And Mark's like, "Oh, she's going to get it now." And Daddy said, "Why did you hit him with a rock?" And I said, "Because he called Davy Concepcion a nigger." And my daddy turned around and he took Mark by the scruff of his neck and he dragged him out behind our house and he gave him a licking with his belt. And from that moment on, I knew, never hesitate and do the right thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I grew up in the South. Sexism is alive and kicking, and it was in my family too. My mother had 4 daughters. My father left her because he wanted a son. God blessed him with no more children. I grew up, I immediately noticed from a young age, and my mom used to ask me where I got my ideas, and I don't know because nobody around me had my ideas. I didn't understand racism. I didn't understand sexism because the way I looked at it is God never asked me what color I was going to be, what my gender was going to be. He never asked me these questions, and I shouldn't have a deficiency because he made these choices for me. So for me, it came down to either I believed in God or I didn't. And if I didn't, that's one thing, but if I did, then I have to believe that God doesn't hate women. And that's just the way it was. So if God doesn't hate women, then I'm not punished for being a woman. Mm-hmm. And so I had to reevaluate the disgrace of being born a woman. And I decided that if I loved God and God loved me and he didn't make mistakes, then by God, I was worth every penny. And I made that decision and decided that I just wasn't going to feel worthless, and I wasn't going to apologize for being a woman, and I wasn't going to allow anyone else to treat me second class because I was a woman. And it was just a decision I made, and I feel like my purpose is to help other women get to that point, wherever that point is for them.
That's beautiful. I know that every single woman in here has had the conversation with herself, I'm not enough of. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not whatever it is. I'm not enough. I'm not smart enough. I know that every single woman in here is my sister in that. And one of the big conversations that I have with myself internally is, Annie, yes, you are enough. And I'll just go back very quickly because I want to make sure we get you out of here on time. Back in 2003, I was at a charity event and I bid on an item to spend half a day with a legislator because I really wanted to see what they were doing every day making laws in the state of Arizona. And I won the bid, and the person whom they had paired me up with lost his bid for re-election. So I called the organization and I said, look, I still want to do this. Could you find me somebody that would allow me to come spend a half day? So they called me back in a couple of weeks. And they said, there's a young new senator from Tucson. Her name is Gabby Giffords. Would that be okay? Okay, what do I know, right? So I went down and I met Gabby. I got there at 9 a.m. and I was supposed to be there from 9 to noon. And Gabby and I hit it off famously. We went and had lunch together. We went to Committee on the Whole together. I spent the entire day with her. And at the end of the day, I asked Gabby why it was in the state of Arizona that cash value inside of annuities and life insurance wasn't protected 100% against creditors. She said, I don't know. And so she called her chief of staff, and he didn't know. She called somebody else, and they didn't know. And then she called the Department of Insurance, and I'm not sure they can spell insurance. And Gabby leaned against the doorway, folded her arms, and looked at me with that $1 million smile we all remember. And she said, Annie, if you don't like the law, why don't you just come down here and change it? Who am I to do that? So I thought about it for a week. And I called her up and I said, Gabby, what do I have to do? And she said, well, you have to get somebody to sponsor the bill in both the Senate and the House, and it's not going to be me. Oh, okay. Anyway, to make a very long story short, House Bill 2324 became law in 2004 because one person was challenged and one person said, I'm going to go do that. So when I hear people say, my voice doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter, what I do doesn't matter, bullshit. Go do it.